Good morning, everyone. Can you please be upstanding for the entry of the official party? Thank you. Please be seated. Good morning and welcome to the RFS St Florian's Day Awards 2023 here at the RFS Training Academy in Dubbo. In particular, we offer a warm welcome to the Honourable Jihad Dib MP, Minister for Customer Service and Digital Government, Minister for Emergency Services and Minister for Youth Justice. Commissioner of the RFS, Rob Rogers, AFSM, Dougal Saunders MP, Member for Dubbo Electorate, Deputy Commissioner Peter McKechnie, AFSM, Deputy Commissioner Kyle Stewart, APM, Executive Director Trina Schmidt, Executive Director Stephen O'Malley, RFS Directors and Area Commanders, the RFSA President, Mr Scott Campbell, the RFSA Chief Executive Officer, Ms Sharon Ellicott, Associate Chaplain Andrew Hunt, RFS State Ceremonial Unit, senior officers and service members. I'd also like to offer a special acknowledgement to our former Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons, AFSM, who is here today, and unfortunately our other former Commissioner Phil Koberberg is an apology. And most importantly, to our award recipients and your families and friends who are joining us here today. I'd also like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone who is joining us online today for this morning's event. We are broadcasting today from the RFS State Training Academy here in Dubbo. From wherever you are joining us from today, good morning and welcome. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you Mr Lewis Burns, a proud elder of the Tabaga people of the Wiradjuri Nation, who will perform our Welcome to Country.
Thank you for that. For those that don't know, my name's Lewis Burns. I'm traditional owner here in Dubbo, and I've been given the honour. It's always a pleasure to come and welcome people onto country, and I've been given the honour to welcome you onto country. So I don't know who's coming the furthest, but I'm sure there's a lot of people from off country. Congratulations to all the staff and volunteers that are going to receive awards today, and welcome to all the dignitaries. I can't mention all the names that he did. My memory's not that good. But without further ado, through the mother, Makatan Nadyang Maranganyanini Naramang Tabaga Waradri Wile Waradri Manga Waradri. Simply means on behalf of the Tabaga people of the Wiradjuri Nation, we welcome you onto country. We hope you have really good outcomes while you're here and feel welcome while you're on country. So with all that said, we welcome you onto country and thank you very much.
Thank you, Lewis. And can you please be upstanding now for the Australian National Anthem?
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are one and free, with golden soil and wealth of toil. Our home is girt by sea, our land abounds in nature's gifts, all beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every state of birth Australia fair. commonwealth, the vast renowned of all the lands. For those who've come across the seas with boundless plains to share, with courage let us all combine to advance Australia fair. In joyful strains and let us sing advance Australia
A very special day for us here at the RFS. It is St Florian's Day, named after the patron saint of firefighters. In your program, and for those watching online in the booklet, you will find the story of St Florian. It's a story that stems from over 1700 years ago. St Florian was sentenced to be burnt alive and promised to return climbing into heaven on the flames. It's claimed that a life was saved during a fire as someone yelled out St Florian's name, and a tale where a brewery was saved from a fire with a single pitcher of water. So as well as being the patron saint of firefighters, he's also the patron saint of brewers. And it looks like a few of you might be ready for a beer by the end of the ceremony today. Fireys and a brewery, what could possibly go wrong? So, as I said, a very special day for us in the RFS and for all here today, always a respectful event, but also a celebration. I'd now like to invite RFS Associate Chaplain Pastor Andrew Hunt to offer a prayer for firefighters.
Almighty God, on this day we remember the courage and dedication of those who in days past undertook fire protection in the bush and in the grasslands, thus pioneering the rural fire service we know today. Especially on this day, we remember the supreme sacrifice of the few for the many in the performance of their duty in times of fire and emergency response. Grant that, being inspired by their example, we may follow them in their endeavours to work for the community where protection and neighbourly love reign supreme. Bless the recipients of the medals and certificates presented this day, and may they always be to their wearers reminders of the calling they have accepted, a calling to think of service, not self, a calling to perform duty, not follow personal desires. May the medals be worn with honour and pride. We pray for your continued protection and blessing upon all today. We acknowledge family and friends who have supported the recipients. You share in this honour bestowed on your loved ones today. Grant that there may never be a shortage of men and women of courage, character and integrity who will volunteer to train, serve in the course of fire and emergency protection. Lord, hear our prayers and bring peace to all men. Amen.
Thank you, Andrew. I would now ask Commissioner of the RFS, Rob Rogers, AFSM, to come forward to address the ceremony. These are the third St Florian's Day Awards since the Commissioner's appointment. I know he was very keen to hold this year's event in a regional centre, and I'm sure those of you who have not visited the Academy before are enjoying the chance to see this valuable facility firsthand. Commissioner Rob Rogers.
Good morning, everyone. Well, it is a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be in Dubbo, and as Anthony said, for the first time holding this ceremony outside of the Sydney area, which I think gives a chance for the RFS to make sure it's doing things from the centre of the state, and the geographical centre of the state is here, and we're very proud to obviously have a significant facility here, so it makes sense to have them here. Can I also just, before I talk a little bit more about St Florian's Day, I'm sure you just join with me in acknowledging the passing of the Queensland firefighter Isabella Nash, who died during awful circumstances at a factory fire in Queensland. So I'm sure you just join with me in passing on our condolences and acknowledging that loss. The St Florian's Day Awards are one of the most important events on our calendar because it gives us a chance to acknowledge the best of our people. And the best of our people is in a whole host of ways. It's obviously for things extremely brave, meritorious, but it's also for people that go above and beyond and do things that sometimes are on the national stage, that are things that do things for our communities and make either our firefighters' jobs easier to do or make the community safer. So there's a whole lot of things that these awards consider. And I think it's fair to say that the awards that we're here to honour today, and I'm actually delighted that we've needed to break this into two parts because of how many awards we've had nominations for. So that's great. And people have given far more than can ever be really expected of them, and we'll hear a bit more about that as the day goes on. But it's also a day of firsts, and I'd like to also particularly welcome our new Minister, Minister Jihad Dib, to both this ceremony and also to the General Emergency Services family. And it's the Minister's first event with the RFS, official first event with the RFS. We've obviously caught up with him, and I think there's no better way to introduce him to the RFS than to see the best of the RFS that we're going to be looking at here today. And I know from my discussions with the Minister, he's a strong supporter of the RFS, particularly the volunteerism of the service and the people that give when they don't have to give anymore, but they keep giving. And we see that whether it's fire or flood, the RFS is there. Whether it's COVID, whether it's Varroa mite, anything else that happens, RFS members are there. So it's important that part of also being out here is the RFS was forged in rural New South Wales, and it's good to make sure we don't lose sight of that. I think it's also that we've got that, if you consider we've had the 2019-20 fire season, we then went into COVID, and then we had a bit more COVID, then we had some floods mixed in with COVID, and then we had some more floods, and now obviously we saw at the end of this fire season just gone, starting to see that changing and that turning. And whilst we'll be seeing and talking a lot about what people have done in flood events, and there's some absolutely outstanding things that people have been doing, we also will see our operational focus shift back to fire, and I think it's fair to say that the next few years are going to be quite challenging for us from a fire point of view, particularly in those grassland areas and those areas revegetating that were burnt in 2019 and 20. But I think one of the things that stood out, and whether it's fire or flood or COVID or whatever, is our people and what our people do. And at the end of the day, the RFS is nothing without our people. And we've got some incredible people in this service, volunteers and paid. They just do enormously huge amount of work, and they do because they really want to do and they believe what they're doing. And I always find that people do so much better if they believe in what they're doing, not just doing a task or doing a job or whatever it happens to be. And our people, no matter what it is, no matter what challenge gets put up to them, they always just do it. And they do it not because it's their area of expertise, because obviously firefighting is, but beyond that, but they do it because the community needs them. And that's why they join the RFS, is to be able to help their community in times of need. And that's local communities, but it's also communities further afield. It's communities in other parts of the state or even interstate and sometimes overseas to help people. And that's what people join the RFS for, is to help people. So we'll be talking today about people, that can-do attitude of RFS members, whether it's wading into fast-moving floodwaters, providing life-saving first aid, compassion where compassion was needed, and making sure that we're there for that community, wherever it is, whatever the hazard is, that we're there. We'll hear some remarkable stories of achievement, dedication and sacrifice, none more so than the recipient of the award for Valor. So first time the service's highest commendation has been awarded in more than a decade, recognising a member's commitment to human life and conspicuous courage in extremely volatile conditions. In the course of their duties, our members have bravely faced challenges and dangerous conditions, worked on demanding and complex emergencies, and engaged, informed, motivated their communities to be more aware and better prepared. At the same time, our volunteer members run businesses, farms, hold down jobs, support families, raise children, and we've only got to see some of the families here today. Indeed, families are involved in these brigades, and it's they manage everything else, but also manage to volunteer. And I think it's fair to say that people do these things on a day-to-day basis, and we don't get to see all those things. But what I am really delighted is that we get the chance to actually acknowledge what people do in a ceremony like this, and just have a chance to say thank you. I know you don't do it for these awards, but it is also important that you know that the service, the government, and indeed the community does recognise the work you do and has the opportunity just to say thank you. I also just want to say thank you to the families of the recipients and people that go about these things day in, day out. Because if it wasn't for the support of your families, you wouldn't be able to do the things you do. So I just want to also just put out a shout out to the families and thank them very much, because you're as much part of the RFS as the people receiving it, and you're as worthy of awards as the people receiving it, because the things that you do and the sacrifices you make enable the RFS member to do what they do. So whether it's whatever partner it is, they all step up. And I've got to say, it's one of the most proudest things that I have to do is as Commissioner is to be at these awards and just see the amount of work our people do and see how humble our people are, because I know that people are very uncomfortable being put on the spot, and it's always, and Shane will know this as well, that people come up here and they're sort of looking for stage exit left as quickly as they possibly can, because they feel uncomfortable being stuck up here in front of everyone, so they're ready to run whenever they can. So I know you do want to do that, but just stay and just try and enjoy the moment, and also to the fairness of the people taking photos, please just stay for a moment, please. But look, I just genuinely just want to pass on my thanks in advance to everyone for all the work you have done, and I think you make the RFS a much better place. You really do. And we couldn't do the things we do, have the reputation that the agency has in the community, if it wasn't for people like you that are receiving these awards. And that also extends to people, our government, because our government sees the work you do and then realises the value proposition of RFS and continues to support it. So it's really important that you continue to do what you do, but also be proud of what you've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. And as the Commissioner said, it is a great pleasure to have our new Minister for Emergency Services, the Honourable Jihad Dib MP, here with us today for his first official event with the RFS following his recent appointment. Before his election to Parliament, the Minister was the principal for Punchbowl Boys High, transforming the school by developing strong relationships with the community, local organisations and government agencies. He may find many similarities in this new role, working with our members, their communities and many other organisations and agencies as we all work to assist and protect the people of our state. I'd now like to invite the Honourable Jihad Dib MP, Minister for Customer Service and Digital Government, Minister for Emergency Services and Minister for Youth Justice to address our ceremony.
Well, thank you very much, Anthony, and good morning, everybody. School teacher, good morning, everybody. That's like, we've got to break it up a little bit. Of course, I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians, and I pay my respects to all those past, present, emerging. I want to thank Lenny for a wonderful introduction. And also I want to acknowledge there are so many people here to acknowledge, but it would be remiss of me if I didn't acknowledge, my new best mate, Commissioner Rob Rogers, another good mate of mine, former Commissioner as well, Shane Fitzsimmons, and of course the whole leadership team as well as I want to pay a special acknowledgement to the local member and a very decent human being, Dougal Saunders. Thanks for being out here today and for welcoming him, and I'm sure we're going to catch up a little bit later. Politics isn't always what it seems, and Dougal's a very decent human being, and we may come from different sides of politics, but we believe in the same thing, which is actually about making a better society. Now, I do have a speech, but I'm going to try and look away from the speech, and James from my office gets frustrated with this because he and Ben spend a lot of time putting it together. But after being here for the morning and spending some time and listening to the Commissioner's speech, I thought I'm just going to change it up a little bit. So at the 15-minute mark, if some of you start keeling over, maybe let me know and I'll know to finish it up. But I suppose when I was hearing the Commissioner speak and the chaplain talk a bit earlier as well, it got me thinking. It was about the 3rd of January 2020, and we'd saved a lot of money and we decided to holiday in Mollymook as a family. Anyone who knows Mollymook knows that the hardest week to get is that week between Christmas and New Year. But at the same time, of course, the fires were absolutely raging, and I think it was New Year's Eve that the fires really hit the south coast, down around Conjola, yada yada, and that part of the world. And so we were isolated. We were fine because, we were fine. If worst came to worst, we were going to be able to go down to the beach and be on the sand. But for my family here, they were really worried, and my parents were really worried. And of course, the first, we were told if you don't need to be here, leave when the evacuation could happen. And we did. And we stopped at the Nowra McDonald's, as every single person does, on their way to the south coast. And it was just a lineup of RFS vehicles, line after line after line. There probably would have been, I'd say, about 30 to 40 vehicles. And the brave, and I say they're brave, men and women who'd stopped in to get themselves a coffee and a burger and just had this look like they were ready for battle. And it reminded me of my old days as a history teacher when I used to teach World War I, and I would talk about people preparing for battle. And to me, I've never felt anything like that before. I've never seen anything like that before, where these, I would call them mini families from all parts of New South Wales, because of course we looked at where the trucks were from, were there together getting ready for a battle. Because, as you know, not long after that, the whole issues around Cobargo, and Shane Fitzsimmons knows very well the issues that were happening there, a whole township that got burnt out. But it comes back to that sense of community. And I remember with my kids saying to them, go up and thank every single person that you can, because they're doing something to help others. And when you grow up, I want you to do the same sort of thing, whether it's in the RFS or whether it's in other forms of volunteering, which then extends to the next point, which is community. We're only a good community when we support one another. We're only a good community when we back one another, when we believe in one another. It doesn't matter what role we play in society. Every single one of us is a leader, and every single one of us has got a responsibility to help the other. Today, there's going to be a number of people receiving awards, and Mr. Blackmore's receiving a Valor Award, which is exceptional. But I would guarantee that not one person today being recognised for a moment stopped and thought, you know what, if I do this, I'm going to get an award, or I'm going to get a clap, or I'm going to get a certificate, or I'm going to get a badge. Every single person who's being recognised today did it because their first instinct was to be courageous and to be helpful and to show valour. And when people in our emergency services have that in their heart, then I couldn't ask for any more as the minister. And we as a country couldn't ask for any more from anybody. And let's not forget that 98% of the RFS is made up of volunteers, people who are leaving their families, are leaving their farms, are leaving their businesses, are leaving their work, people who believe in that greater good of giving back and of doing something and of helping people out. And it's something that we often don't talk about enough, but it's exceptional Australian spirit that has us volunteering, that has helping each other, that has us, when people are down, rather than walk past them and say, thank goodness it's not my problem, we say, how can I help? What can I do? Now, some of you here stand at the front line, but others do the logistics. Others make the sandwiches. Others do the roads. Others make the phone calls. Others give the pat on the back. Some will wash uniforms. Every single person plays a role, and every single person's role is just as valuable as everybody else's. So yes, this is my first official, I suppose, call it job as the Emergency Services Minister, and certainly with the RFS. And I couldn't think of anything that I'd be more inspired to do than to be out here. And I'm glad it's out here in Dubbo. And I'm glad that we're out here seeing the academy. And I'm glad that we're in the regions. Because I couldn't think of anything else that I'd rather do than to see the very best of what this RFS family is about. And to see that spirit and to experience it and to introduce myself to you and to say that you've got a champion in me, a person who believes in what you do, a person who believes in the value of giving back, and a person who has seen firsthand the impact of communities that are devastated when a natural disaster hits. So I want to thank you for everything that you do. I want to thank the families who sacrifice so much. I want to thank the leadership for what they provide, past, present, and the emerging. And I want to thank all of you who encourage somebody else to join. The other thing that is really clear is that we've had, 4 years of really difficult times. We've had one thing after another. People are a bit fatigued, and we keep showing up, and we keep turning up. And I said a bit earlier, we don't just say, this is not my job, I'll walk past. Really, the RFS didn't have to get involved in flood rescue, but they did. And they made many rescues. I think the latest I was at Yagari was 68 rescues, 66 helicopter rescues in one day, a record. No one heard about that. They didn't make a song and dance about it because it's the spirit of what you are. You just do what needs to be done. When COVID was happening, your connections to community not only helped people get through, but made sure that those who were vulnerable weren't left behind, that communities weren't forgotten about. There's people right now from within your ranks who are in the Northern Territory supporting our friends up north who need some assistance. There are people ready to go overseas. And of course, today's poignancy is the fact that we know that this is not something that people do for fun. This is also a dangerous, dangerous job. And it's a risky job. And I send our thoughts and our best wishes, and I conveyed them to the Minister in Queensland. But it's a reminder that every single time you face a challenge, you also take a risk. And we should never lose sight of that, whatever role we have in society. Because when people are running away from danger, you're the ones who are running into it, and you're the ones who are standing behind. Can I say one enduring image that I have? And sorry, one enduring image I have is not long after the fires. I don't want to embarrass Mr. Fitzsimmons here, but he knows, as my local community is, at that stage it was Lakemba, and we don't have many bushfires in Lakemba because, you know, concrete seems to be the way that people's choices there. We've got plenty of concrete and plenty of astroturf, but not many trees. But we're going to change that. And it banks down. And that community wasn't affected by the bushfires, but I want to share a story with you that touched my heart and reminded me how we are all part of one family. We decided to run as a community a bit of a fundraiser to take some stuff down. We thought Cabargo, went to Cabargo, Braidwood, and we were trying to get into Mollymook, but they were fine, down at Conjola, sorry. They were fine, somebody else was looking after them. And put it up locally. Look, we're going to collect some food and whatever else you can bring. We're going to do it for 2 days in Lakemba. One of the agencies, or one of the organisations had a spare shop. They let us use the shop front. I was expecting we'll fill up a minivan. We managed to fill a whole truck, like a semi-trailer truck, like a one single, I'm sure there's a proper name for it, but a big truck that normal people can't drive without a licence. 2 vans and another little mini truck. And that was from people who weren't affected, maybe didn't understand it, but knew that when one person suffers, we all support. But the story that I want to share with you is the story that will touch me forever, so that you know you're not alone when you're out there. It was a story of an elderly lady, Arabic speaking, who couldn't speak much English, and I speak Arabic as well. Not very well, according to my parents, but that's because I used to run away from Arabic school on a Saturday, because I had dreams of being an NRL player. Obviously that didn't work out. And it's not bad, because I was going to play for the Dragons, and I'm not doing so well anyway. But this elderly lady came to me with like a plastic bag. It was a plastic bag, a plastic shopping bag. And she said in Arabic, "I'd like to give these to the people for the fires." She didn't know, that's all she could say. And I said, "You don't have to." She said, "No, I want to." Anyway, I opened up the bag with her there, and I swear to you, there was literally half of everything. Half a bag of sugar, half tea bags, half a thing of Panadols, and there was like a few other bits and pieces. And I just looked at her and I said, "You don't have to." And she said to me, "I don't have much, but I want to give them half of what I have." And when I took that down to Cobargo for everything else we had, all the nappies and everything else, that bag to me was the most precious bag, because it reminded me that we are all in this together, that we are all there for one another. I know we've got a fire season coming up, and I know that there's some concerns, and I'll do everything I can to assist you where I can. But I thank you in advance for the challenges we face, and I thank you in advance for the work that we do. I thank you for giving up your time, for giving up things that are special to you, for doing what's good for others, because that's the spirit that sustains us in those days when it's really tough, when those fires are burning, when we lose loved ones. It's that sustains us all of the time. So it is an incredible honour to be the minister. It's an incredible privilege to be your minister. And it's something that I take very, very seriously. And I'll probably annoy you because I'll just turn up unannounced at different events. But it's the value that I see in it. I thank you for what you do. I thank your families. But I also thank you for the way that you've welcomed me, Commissioner, and your whole team. And I suppose the final thing is that I thank you that you entrust me to be able to tell these inspiring stories of the people that I am incredibly proud to call the minister. Again, congratulations to everybody today and to the support crew around them. I know you don't do it for this, but I'm really, really glad that you're acknowledged, and it's wonderful to be here. Have a really good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. So we're now at the business end of this morning's ceremony. For everyone here today, and also for those who are joining us online, today you will hear many extraordinary stories of bravery, of service and contribution to the RFS and our local communities. Awards for those who put their lives on the line to help others, whether it be fires, floods or accidents, and those who have made an incredible commitment to the Rural Fire Service. We do have two ceremonies today. And don't tell the people this afternoon, but I reckon this is the best one. Given that, we will be grouping some of the awards together so the brigades and members can celebrate today together instead of following the set order in the booklet there. But feel free to find them in the booklet and follow along if you can. To the families and the friends here today, this event is just as much about you. So if you do want to come up and get a photo down the front here on your phone or anything, feel free. Adam's going to be here taking photographs down the front. He doesn't bite, just muscle him out of the way if you do want to get a shot. There's nothing wrong at all with that. So to the award recipients, it is now time to straighten your uniforms. I'll take this opportunity to remind you not to forget to pause for that photograph at the end. I know the Minister will have attended plenty of school speech days and award presentations, so maybe follow his lead. Could I ask the Minister and the Commissioner to please come forward to present our recipients with their awards this morning. As we do read out the citations this morning, can you please hold your applause until the end as the award recipients come up onto the stage.
You'll get used to my dad jokes in time.
Our first award this morning is the Commissioner's Commendation for Valor. Deputy Group Captain Philip Blackmore, Central Coast Area Hunter. Deputy Group Captain Philip Blackmore is recognised for an act of selfless valour in dangerous conditions without regard to his personal safety. The township of Guandolen on the New South Wales Central Coast was rocked by an explosion early in the morning of Sunday, the 6th of September 2020. At that time, Deputy Group Captain Blackmore and an off-duty paramedic, Mr Matthew Wilson, rushed to assist, finding an acetylene cylinder had caused the explosion in a car. An unconscious man with significant burns and injuries was lying beside the vehicle. Without hesitating, the pair began resuscitation on the casualty as the car continued to burn next to them, and neighbours tried to cool the vehicle with garden hoses. While emergency crews arrived, the scene was deemed volatile and a 100-metre exclusion zone established. Deputy Group Captain Blackmore and Mr Wilson continued to work with paramedics within the exclusion zone to give the patient every chance of survival. For his commitment to human life and remarkable bravery in dangerous conditions posing a significant risk to his own life, Deputy Group Captain Philip Blackmore is awarded the highest RFS Service Commendation, the Commissioner's Award for Valor. Deputy Group Captain Blackmore is just the fourth recipient of the Commissioner's Award for Valour in the service's history. And we spoke with members of the Guandolen Brigade about the incident and the courageous efforts of all of those involved, and they wanted to recognise the work of Deputy Group Captain Blackmore and all of those involved in this terrible event.
Started about 7 a.m, almost on the dot, with an explosion that was heard all over Guandolen, Summerland Point.
Felt the house shake and rolled over to my wife and said that couldn't be good. As I started to get up and get dressed, a couple of messages, as Dave mentioned, come through from our neighbouring president, and one of our members was out on a boat who actually seen the column pretty quickly, so dressed in the car, and on the way to the station the pages went off. So when we got there, Ben, our president who lived across the road, already had the truck started out the door, and we got on scene pretty quick. Phil's been in the service a long time. We've all worked around him for a long time, especially Brody and the rest of the brigade. He's an ex-captain of our brigade and a life member. Very calm, very cool and collected in all situations. Hearing his voice past that radio message made all of us realise the kind of job that we were turning up to. But without missing a beat, Phil, when we turned up, sitting there, no fire truck, no fire protection, assisting the off-duty paramedic Matt, doing CPR next to a burning vehicle. Singed arm, hairs, the works, just continued on until we could actually move them away to safety. Being 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, it was pretty well noted that everyone that had evacuated from their houses, hadn't eaten, hadn't had coffees, were still in their pyjamas. I then put out an urgent message to any members that weren't on scene or that could make themselves available to head to the station. And we notified all the residents that we'd set up an evacuation centre here at the station. So Mercy dashed out to the shops, grabbed some bacon and eggs and whatever we could, and by the time we got back here, the guys were already making breakfast for all the local residents.
But terribly proud of what our brigade did, our members did, and also the reactions of the community, because they also rallied around. and offered support as well. So I just great pride in what our members and what our brigade was able to do, and also the community. I will say I'm quite honoured by the fact that it has happened, but really very, very surprised that it did. I mean, it's just things you do as a member of the brigade, a member of the service.
It's very humbling. As Dave said, no one joins for anything like this, but I think the key for me is, at least for us, it's a unit citation. So for us, it is based on the teamwork of everyone that was there on that day. And to me, that's probably the most fitting award that could be given to the brigade is based on that team effort.
The Commissioner's Unit Citation for Service, Guandaland Rural Fire Brigade, Central Coast Area Hunter. The Guandaland Rural Fire Brigade is recognised for its members' courageous response to a fatal explosion on Father's Day 2020. Guandaland Pumper and Cat 1, Cat 9 and 12 crew members responded to a residential property where an acetylene cylinder had exploded inside a motor vehicle. Deputy Group 4 and an off-duty paramedic were on scene performing CPR on a man who had sustained severe injuries. Brigade members positioned a high-pressure reel between the patient and vehicle to provide protection and set to work to extinguish the fire. It was then identified that another cylinder was venting in the vehicle with a high risk of explosion. A 100-metre exclusion zone was immediately established. Paramedics determined the patient could not be moved, so the first arriving crews remained within the exclusion zone, setting up monitors and staging appliances in order to provide as safe as possible an area to continue working and reduce the impact of a potential second explosion. Despite the best efforts of all of those involved in providing medical assistance, the patient succumbed to his injuries. All crews were then asked to assist with the evacuation of nearby residents to an evacuation centre that was then established at the Guandaland station. For its members' committed and professional response to this major incident at significant risk to their own personal safety, the Guandaland Rural Fire Brigade is a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Unit Citation for Service. The Commissioner's Unit Citation for Service, Lake Munmora Rural Fire Brigade, Central Coast Area Hunter. The Lake Munmora Rural Fire Brigade is recognised for its members' courageous response to a fatal explosion on Father's Day 2020. Lake Munmora Pumper responded to a reported explosion in Guandaland at around 7 o'clock that morning. En route, Deputy Group 4 provided a sit-rep confirming an explosion and subsequent fire and that CPR was underway on a male patient. The crew understood this work would be a challenging incident. On arrival, 2 crew members immediately got to work assisting Guandaland Pumper with hose lines. The Lake Munmora Captain and Senior Deputy Captain, a registered nurse, assisted with CPR on the patient, who was located within metres of the burning vehicle in rotation with 2 members of Guandaland Brigade. It was then identified that a second cylinder was venting in the back of the car with a high risk of exploding. A 100-metre exclusion zone was immediately established. However, paramedics determined that the patient could not be moved. Appliances were staged and 65mm monitors were set up to provide as safe as possible an area for crews to continue assisting the casualty. Despite the efforts of all of those involved in providing medical assistance, the patient succumbed to his injuries. All crews were then asked to assist with the evacuation of nearby residents to the evacuation centre established at Guandaland Station. For its members' committed and professional response to this major incident at significant risk to their personal safety, the Lake Munmora Brigade is the worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Unit Citation for Service. The Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery, individual, Group Captain Andrew McDonald, Macarthur, Area, Greater Sydney. Group Captain Andrew McDonald is recognised for his courage in saving a motorist trapped in a life-threatening situation in floodwaters on the 2nd of March 2022. The young man was stranded on his ute on Gurner Avenue at Austral, about 200 metres from the edge of the fast-flowing water when the Gledswood Rural Fire Brigade and a New South Wales SES crew arrived on scene at around 9 p.m. With the motorist clearly in peril, Group Captain McDonald and firefighter Schumack and an SES member waded into the dark water to rescue the man. As the depth of the water increased, the rescuers were buffeted by strong currents. The trio waded in close formation for about 100 metres to reach the motorist before guiding him back to shore, where he was reunited with family. For selflessly exposing himself to significant risk to save the life of another, Group Captain McDonald is a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery. Group Captain Craig Robertson, AFSM, Illawarra Sutherland Area, Greater Sydney. Illawarra Sutherland Group Captain Craig Robertson is recognised for an act of selfless bravery in rescuing a member of the public in life-threatening danger. After days of substantial rainfall and flooding, conditions were extremely dangerous when Otford Rural Fire Brigade and Illawarra Group 1 responded to a concern for welfare report on the 2nd of July of last year. Upon arrival at the Otford railway station, the crews could hear screams from the Hacking River below. In torrential rain and poor light, the crews then made their way down to the riverbank. Group Captain Robertson located a male wedged in a tree surrounded by the rapidly rising river and, deciding immediate intervention was required, secured a rope to himself and a member of the Otford crew before moving into the floodwater. He was in almost 1.5 metres of fast-moving water by the time that he reached the male, whom he secured to his line before was assisted from the water by the Otford crew. For his swift and selfless actions in willingly putting the safety of a person in a life-threatening situation before his own, Group Captain Craig Robertson is awarded the Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery. The Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery, individual, firefighter Blake Schumack, Macarthur, Area, Greater Sydney. Firefighter Blake Schumack is recognised for his courage in saving a motorist trapped in a life-threatening situation in floodwaters on the 2nd of March last year. The young man was stranded on his ute on Gurner Avenue at Austral, about 200 metres from the edge of the fast-flowing water, when the Gledswood Rural Fire Brigade and an SES crew arrived on scene at around 9 o'clock. With the motorist clearly in peril, firefighter Schumack and Group Captain McDonald and an SES member waded into the dark water to rescue the man. As the depth of the water increased, the rescuers were buffeted by strong currents. The trio waded in close formation for about 100 metres to reach the motorist before guiding him back to shore, where he was reunited with family. For selflessly exposing himself to significant risk to save the life of another, firefighter Schumack is a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery. The Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery to an individual, firefighter John Augustin, Canobolas, Area Western. Firefighter John Augustin is recognised for his selfless courage in rescuing people trapped in life-threatening danger from catastrophic flooding. When floodwaters up to 2 metres deep tore through the small township of Eugowra with little warning on the morning of the 14th of November of last year, causing massive destruction, firefighter Augustin did not hesitate to go to the aid of his local community. The Mount Pleasant Brigade steered the brigade's Cat 1 tanker through swirling and rapidly moving water, working resolutely to locate and rescue residents trapped in their flooded homes. In a life-saving effort, time and time again in water up to his neck, firefighter Augustin assisted, often carrying residents to the tanker so that they could be ferried to safety, frequently with more than 15 people on board. Firefighter John Augustin's courage in placing the safety of his community before his own makes him a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery. The Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery, individual, firefighter Michael Miles, Canobolas, Area Western. Firefighter Michael Miles is recognised for his selfless courage in rescuing people trapped in life-threatening danger from catastrophic flooding. When floodwaters up to 2 metres deep tore through the small town of Eugowra with little warning on the morning of the 14th of November 2022, causing massive destruction, firefighter Miles did not hesitate to go to the aid of his community. In a life-saving effort, the Eugowra crew steered their Cat 1 tanker through rapidly moving and swirling water, working resolutely to locate and rescue residents trapped inside their flooded homes and transport them to safety. In the following days, firefighter Miles continued to assist his fellow residents, helping to remove debris, washing out homes and businesses, and using his professional expertise as an electrician to check electrical systems. It was not until days later that he focused on the damage to his own home and business. Firefighter Miles' courage in placing the safety of his community before his own makes him a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery. The Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery, individual, Captain Alan Noble, Canobolas, Area Western. Mount Pleasant Rural Fire Brigade Captain Alan Noble is recognised for his selfless courage in rescuing people trapped in life-threatening danger from catastrophic flooding. When floodwaters up to 2 metres deep tore through the small town of Eugowra with little warning on the morning of the 14th of November last year, causing massive destruction, Captain Noble and his team did not hesitate to go to the aid of the local community. Under Captain Noble's leadership, the crew navigated its Cat 1 tanker through swirling and rapidly moving water to locate residents trapped inside their flooded homes. In a life-saving effort, time and time again, in water up to their necks, they assisted, often carrying people to the tanker before ferrying them up to higher ground. Over the following days, Captain Noble and his crew continued working to help their fellow residents, removing debris and washing out homes and businesses in an effort to start restoring some sense of normality. Captain Alan Noble's leadership and courage in placing the safety of others before his own makes him a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery. The Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery, individual, firefighter Lachlan Noble, Canobolas, Area Western. Firefighter Lachlan Noble is recognised for his selfless courage in rescuing people trapped in life-threatening danger from catastrophic flooding. When floodwaters up to 2 metres deep tore through the small town of Eugowra with little warning on the morning of the 14th of November last year, causing massive destruction, firefighter Noble did not hesitate to go to the aid of his community. The Mount Pleasant crew navigated its Cat 1 tanker through swirling and rapidly moving floodwater, working resolutely to locate residents trapped inside their flooded homes. In a life-saving effort, time and time again, in water up to his neck, firefighter Noble assisted, often carrying people to the tanker so that they could be ferried to higher ground. Over the following days, firefighter Noble continued working to help his fellow residents, removing debris and washing out homes and businesses in an effort to start restoring some sense of normality. He continues to work with community groups and council to develop solutions and strategies for the stronger development of a devastated Eugowra. Firefighter Noble's courage in placing the safety of others before his own makes him a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery. The Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery individual, Senior Deputy Captain Dallas Pearce, Canobolas Area Western. Eugowra Brigade Senior Deputy Captain Dallas Pearce is recognised for his selfless courage in rescuing people trapped in life-threatening danger from catastrophic flooding. When floodwaters up to 2 metres deep tore through the small town of Eugowra with little warning on the morning of the 14th of November last year, causing massive destruction, Senior Deputy Captain Pearce did not hesitate to go to the aid of his community. In a life-saving effort, the Eugowra crew steered their Cat 1 tanker through swirling and rapidly moving floodwaters, working resolutely house by house to locate and rescue people trapped inside and transport them to safety. In the following days, SDC Pearce continued to help his fellow residents start the journey to recovery, removing debris and washing out homes and businesses before focusing on his own responsibilities to his home and work. Senior Deputy Captain Pearce's courage in placing the safety of his community before his own makes him a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery. The Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery individual, Captain Bill Turner, Canobolas Area Western. Eugowra Brigade Captain Bill Turner is recognised for his selfless courage in rescuing people in danger trapped in life-threatening danger from catastrophic flooding. When floodwaters up to 2 metres deep tore through the small township of Eugowra with little warning on the morning of the 14th of November last year, causing massive destruction, Captain Turner and his crew did not hesitate to go to the aid of the community. In a life-saving effort, he navigated the brigade's tanker through the rapidly moving water, going house to house to locate and rescue residents trapped inside and transport them to safety. Despite the loss of his own home, butcher shop and car for the next 5 days, Captain Turner continued to help his fellow residents start the journey to recovery, removing debris and washing out homes and businesses before focusing on his own circumstances. Captain Bill Turner's courage in placing the safety of his community before his own makes him a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery. The Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery individual, firefighter Patrick Welsh, Mid-Lachlan Valley, Area Western. Firefighter Patrick Welsh, Eugowra North Brigade, is recognised for his selfless courage in rescuing people in danger trapped in life-threatening danger from catastrophic flooding. When floodwaters up to 2 metres deep tore through the small town of Eugowra with little warning on the morning of the 14th of November 2022, causing massive destruction, firefighter Welsh did not hesitate to go to the aid of his community. In a life-saving effort, he and his colleagues from Eugowra Brigade worked resolutely throughout the day in chaotic scenes to locate and rescue up to 60 residents trapped inside their flooded homes and then transport them to safety. Over the coming days, firefighter Welsh continued to help his fellow residents start the journey to recovery, removing debris and washing out homes and businesses. Firefighter Welsh's courage in placing the safety of his community before his own makes him a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Bravery. The Commissioner's Unit Citation for Bravery, the Kundal Moto Rural Fire Brigade Mid-Coast Area Hunter. The Kundal Moto Brigade is recognised for its professionalism and courage in ferocious fire conditions at Johns River Village on the 8th of November 2019. At around 2300 hours, the Kundal Moto crew were conducting backburning and patrolling on the Bills Crossing fire at Harrington when they were responded to Johns River Village with reports of multiple structures alight and people trapped. Upon arrival, the crew was flagged down by a member of the Johns River Brigade and his wife. The Johns River member boarded the tanker to direct the crews to the house in which he believed a family member was trapped. It soon became evident that the crew was driving into a firestorm. Firefighter Samantha Bartlett drove the tanker with great professionalism in near zero visibility at times, steering by the glow of the flames. When the tanker came to a fallen tree, Captain Nicholas Wright and firefighters Peter Wiss and William Neal climbed from the relative safety of the cabin to drag it clear. The crew was slowly proceeding with Captain Wright now at the wheel when another tree fell directly in the path of the tanker. Braking hard, he managed to stop the vehicle with its front tyres resting against the tree and the crew of Harrington 1 very close behind them. The brigade were unable to proceed any further as they were not fitted with caber. As the cabin started to fill with the smell of burning plastic, the crew activated its emergency sprays and turned around to seek refuge on the outskirts of the firestorm. The Kundal Moto crew proceeded to save another 4 homes that same night with the help of the Wootton, Warhope, Hannam Vale, Bonnie Hills and Johns River Brigades. After being stood down at around 9 o'clock the following morning, after receiving welfare at the station, the crew were asked if it could assist at Purfleet until additional resources arrived. Immediately agreeing, the crew deployed to continue firefighting until 1400 hours when another crew arrived. In all, due to extenuating circumstances, the brigade responded for 9 continuous days, filling 24-hour rosters. For its members' selfless courage and commitment in responding to save life and property, the Kundal Moto Brigade is a worthy recipient of a Commissioner's Unit Citation. The Commissioner's Commendation for Service individual, Deputy Group Captain Andrew Barnard, Mid-Lachlan Valley, Area Western. Captain Andrew Barnard is recognised for his leadership and support for the community in the Forbes local government area throughout repeated flooding events in 2022. Whether instituting transport for teachers to the small school nearby, devising flood response strategies or taking part in transport operations for essential workers, Captain Barnard put the needs of the community first. When the township was first threatened by floods, Captain Barnard and his team were airlifted in, developing plans for the village's protection and camping out to support residents. And when the village later came under renewed threat, he was again first on the ground. Captain Barnard led the RFS response to help protect homes and businesses in Forbes from flash flooding, before then helping to prepare for the town's third and most severe flood, leading crews in sandbagging for days in readiness. Captain Barnard's leadership and practical support to the Mid-Lachlan Valley team and the Forbes community makes him a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Service. The Commissioner's Commendation for Service, individual Deputy Group Officer Joseph Campbell, Mid-Lachlan Valley Area Western. Deputy Group Officer Joseph Campbell is recognised for his commitment to the community in Western New South Wales during the protracted and challenging flooding events of 2022. Deputy Group Officer Campbell provided vital support for the sector leader over 3 months, assisting with operations in Condobolin, Uabalong and the Willow Bend Aboriginal community. With strong ties to Willow Bend, Deputy Group Officer Campbell led out-of-area crews in the flood response and tasking in the community. He coordinated RFS crews tasked to ferry bulk sandbags by truck and trailer in readiness for transfer by helicopter to defend the isolated Uabalong community, and ensured Condobolin had sufficient supplies by transporting sandbags by road from Forbes. Deputy Group Officer Campbell's versatile support also included driving the State Emergency Services Unimog operational vehicles, relocating stock from flooded areas and serving in the Lachlan Emergency Operations Centre. Deputy Group Officer Joseph Campbell's willing and dedicated support to the community makes him a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Service. The Commissioner's Commendation for Service, individual Inspector Michael Robinson, Mid-Lachlan Valley Area Western. Inspector Michael Robinson is recognised for his leadership and support of the community throughout the extended flooding emergency across the Mid-Lachlan Valley District between September and December of last year. Inspector Robinson quickly established excellent rapport with the Forbes community and local emergency management committee to ensure swift and appropriate responses, establishing the Emergency Operations Centre at the Forbes Fire Control Centre. Assuming a leadership role, he coordinated members' efforts delivering evacuation orders and helping residents to relocate. On the 16th of October, low-lying areas were inundated, and by the 5th of November, large areas of Forbes were flooded, including Inspector Robinson's own home. Setting up his camper at the Fire Control Centre, he remained focused on serving his members and the community, coordinating clean-up efforts while supporting response calls, including at Bimbai and Quandalia. Flooding on the 14th of November impacted villages including Ugowra and Molong, and again inundated Inspector Robinson's home. He remained steadfast, leading by example. Inspector Michael Robinson's selfless courage, resolute work and support for his team and community make him a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Service. Deputy State Protocol Officer Leslie Smith, Cumberland Area, Greater Sydney. Deputy State Protocol Officer Leslie Smith is recognised for her sustained commitment to the New South Wales Rural Fire Service and the welfare of our members. Mrs Smith joined the St Paul's Cadets in 2006, later moving to the Regentville Brigade, attending many local incidents while continuing to assist with the cadets. She volunteers with the Cumberland branch of the Rural Fire Service Association and is currently the Cumberland Operational Support Brigade Secretary. The Deputy State Protocol Officer since 2013, Mrs Smith supports the management of events to uphold the service's reputation as a respected and professional organisation. Demonstrating her support for the well-being of the membership, in 2011 Mrs Smith joined the Critical Incident Support Service as a volunteer peer support officer to support members experiencing distress and hardship. Appointed a duty officer back in 2016, her responsibilities include taking calls and engaging with members seeking assistance, assessing their needs and developing strategies to help. Deputy State Protocol Officer Leslie Smith is a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Service. The Commissioner's Unit Citation for Service, the Mount Arthur Rural Fire Brigade, Arana Area Western. The Mount Arthur Rural Fire Brigade is recognised for its commitment to rescuing a member of the community from a hazardous situation. At 13:35 hours on the 20th of January 2022, Senior Deputy Captain Mandy Whale and firefighter Brendan Hill responded to an assist public call at a property nearby. New South Wales Ambulance and New South Wales Police were on scene with an elderly resident and her dog stuck in an in-ground water tank with an open roof. Upon speaking with the woman and quickly appraising the situation without a rescue unit on scene, Senior Deputy Captain Whale decided to take action and assist the casualty out of that tank. The woman, however, was adamant she would not leave the water until the dog was rescued. Entering the freezing cold water to stabilise the woman, Senior Deputy Captain Whale lifted the dog into a hammock so that it could be lifted up to safety. The two RFS members were then able to assist and support the woman to the surface using a ladder. The casualty, who was not very mobile and had been in the water for some time, was transferred to hospital, suffering hypothermia and shock. The actions of Senior Deputy Captain Whale and firefighter Hill were beyond expectations of RFS volunteers and ensured a positive outcome in very challenging circumstances. Mount Arthur Rural Fire Brigade is a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Unit Citation of Service. So whilst the New South Wales RFS has a history in mitigating and fighting bushfires, as many recipients today clearly demonstrate, our members are faced with all manner of emergencies on a daily basis, and the protracted and challenging flooding events of the past year have been a testament to the versatility and the capability of RFS volunteers and staff.
At the moment, we're now cleaning out buildings that are completely inundated with mud. The business that we're working on at the moment is only recently opened, and it's quite frankly heartbreaking to see the efforts of the owner of this business has just gone. I guess being part of the RFS, we're used to putting out fires, but here we are helping people clean up after this terrible, terrible flood that's just completely decimated the main part of Eugowra and quite a lot of the houses in this town.
boys over behind me have been pumping sand down boat ramps for the past couple of days, pumping sand and mud as much as we can out of houses, trying to help people get rid of some of their stuff, trying to clean up the debris and bits and pieces that have floated down the river. Everyone's had to throw out all of their furniture, all of their goods, everything they've owned. Like, everyone's lost so much down here, and it's not just this flood either, it's the last flood as well. So Tuesday morning, we woke up and I had water about 4 inches from my front door. So we packed up, I grabbed my RFS gear, and that was about all, and I left. And from that day, I've been on an RFS boat, going up and down the river, delivering supplies, doing as much as I can. As soon as the water dropped, I did go over. I had a look at my house. It was full of mud. I lost everything. I've had the most help from, again, all of our RFS crews, cleaning my house out, cleaning my shed out, helping me out. We've got people from all over New South Wales that have come down to help, and it's great to see.
It was very slow moving to start with, but it was slow to go down as well in the first part of it. We were hampered with what we could, the places we could actually get to clean up. The sort of work we've been doing is pumping water out of yards, house clean-outs, shed clean-outs, moving all the flooded debris and that from yards. I don't think our station's seen as many people as it's seen the last 5 days or whatever.
So you can see how high the floodwater was by the debris that's caught up in the trees. So at this point here, it's well over, 2.5 metres over my head is how high the water was coming through here. And it would have come through quite quickly. The current would have been really, really strong, and it would have moved out over this way as well towards the homes and filled up the floodplain.
The Commissioner's Unit Citation for Service, the Ormond, Mungaree, Waratah, Tullamore, the Troughs and Sandy Creek Rural Fire Brigades, Mid-Lachlan Valley Area Western. The Ormond, Mungaree, Sandy Creek, the Troughs, Tullamore and Waratah Brigades are recognised for their courage in a rescue mission to save members of the community trapped in dangerous floodwaters. On the 23rd of September 2022, 2 vehicles were washed off the McGrain Way at Tullamore by the swollen creek. 2 men made it into the water's edge to raise the alarm, with other adults and children clinging to trees in the fast-flowing water. Crews from Ormond, Mungaree, Sandy Creek, the Troughs, Tullamore and Waratah Brigades responded, traversing the flooded roads in the vast darkness of night to reach the scene. In the remote area of the park's local government area, the nearest flood rescue capability was an hour away. The RFS crews took the initiative to use private boats to perform a rescue. The brigades were situated on both sides of the creek and barely able to identify the location of the 4 people in the trees, let alone each other, given the enormous volumes of water. The noise from the water rushing downstream also made verbal communication very difficult. In the trying circumstances, crew members executed a rescue mission to save the adults and children. Members waded into the chest-deep water to reassure the people that help was on its way, while others launched a small underpowered punt to reach the casualties, taking them on board until a larger, more stable boat arrived with sufficient power to return them to the water's edge. For their members' swift and early intervention to save the lives of individuals in peril, the Ormond, Mungaree, Sandy Creek, the Troughs, Tullamore and Waratah Brigades are worthy recipients of a Commissioner's Unit Citation for Service. The Commissioner's Unit Citation for Service, Yeovil and Washpen Rural Fire Brigade, Canobolas Area Western. The Yeovil and Washpen Brigades and Group 21 are recognised for their members' swift and decisive actions to rescue a family trapped in floodwaters in September 2022. On the 16th of September, the two brigades and Group 21 were responded in the early hours of the morning to a report that a vehicle had been washed off a flooded causeway and was jammed against a tree. On arrival, the members witnessed that two adults and a child had been forced to climb out of the vehicle to escape the rising water and were now clinging to its roof. With no other emergency services on scene and fearing for the family's safety, the crews decided to take immediate action. The Yeovil Cat 1 was carefully driven onto the causeway above the vehicle to reduce the speed and the pressure of the floodwater against the vehicle. Once in position, a 38mm hose line was used as a harness to lower Deputy Captain Luke Kerrin into the water to float over and recover the stranded family members from the car's roof. One by one, the other crew members were then able to pull their colleague and their family members back to the tanker. Once all three members of the family were on board, the crew reversed out of the floodwater to safety and awaiting New South Wales ambulance to assess their condition. For their members' commitment to the safety of members of the public caught in dangerous conditions, the Yeovil and Washpen brigades are awarded a Commissioner's Unit Citation for Service. The Commissioner's Unit Citation for Service, Oakville Rural Fire Brigade, Hawkesbury Area, Greater Sydney. The Oakville Rural Fire Brigade is recognised for its members' brave and decisive response to rescue a motorist stranded in dangerous floodwaters in July 2022. On Monday the 4th of July, during major flooding across the Hawkesbury district, the Oakville Brigade responded to a vehicle trapped in rising floodwaters on Pitttown Road at Pitttown. Initial details received by the crew indicated a person was on the roof of their vehicle surrounded by floodwaters. Arriving on scene, Captain Andrew Rutter observed the young driver on the roof of the vehicle with the rapidly rising floodwater already above the window seal of the doors. Due to the quick thinking of the Oakville crews, a strategy was formulated using a tanker as an anchor point and high clearance vehicle to traverse the floodwaters. The tanker and crew cautiously entered the floodwaters, approaching the stranded vehicle and the driver. Deputy Captain Benecki bravely boarded the flooded vehicle from the crew refuge area to rescue the trapped motorist, who was then assisted on board the tanker and returned to safe ground for first aid treatment until the arrival of a New South Wales ambulance. For its members' courageous and selfless duty beyond the scope of responsibility normally expected, the Oakville Brigade is a worthy recipient of a Commissioner's Unit Citation for Service. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation, individual, firefighter Jake Bullen-Zorin, Mid-Lachlan Valley, Area Western. Firefighter Jake Bullen-Zorin is recognised for his support to the community in the Forbes local government area throughout the protracted and challenging flooding events of 2022. When floods first swept over the Forbes area, firefighter Bullen-Zorin was isolated from his property in Weelong and unable to readily return home. Despite the damage to his own crops, over the next 6 weeks, he assisted with numerous tasks out of the Forbes sector, including sandbagging, critical resupply missions and working with the New South Wales State Emergency Service. When Bedgerabong was threatened by floods, firefighter Bullen-Zorin was part of an RFS team that was airlifted in and camped out to support the community and assist in the defence of the village and outlying properties. Upon returning to Forbes, he fulfilled the role of the Sector Aviation Officer coordinating all aviation taskings, including personnel movements and resupply flights. Firefighter Jake Bullen-Zoran's demonstrated commitment to the Forbes community throughout these operations makes him a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Certificate for Commendation. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation individual, Captain Kathleen Everett, Hunter Valley Area Hunter. Captain Kathleen Everett is recognised for her leadership of the Broke Rural Fire Brigade and community in response to a severe flood emergency in 2022. As the Wallumbye Brook began to rise, Captain Everett and Senior Deputy Kenny Fitzsimons began welfare checks on residents in low-lying areas. Within hours, floodwater was rising through the village, which was isolated and without power. Brigade members rallied to support impacted residents. People were able to shelter at the station, and when evacuation orders were issued, the brigade safely and efficiently coordinated the movement of residents and maintained welfare checks on those who were isolated or experiencing medical issues. As the water receded, Captain Everett established a central point for residents to log requests for help and coordinated the brigade's efforts to assist, providing a platform for subsequent recovery operations. Captain Kathleen Everett's leadership of her brigade and community during this crisis was well beyond expectation, making her a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation individual, Deputy Group Officer Andrew Grabham, Chifley Lithgow, Area Western. I'm glad I checked the name beforehand and still stuffed it. Deputy Group Officer Andrew Grabham is recognised for his contribution to the response to two major emergencies in the Chifley Lithgow district. When a gas pipeline under the Macquarie River ruptured during severe flooding on the 2nd of November 2022, Deputy Group Officer Grabham immediately volunteered as the RFS Operations Officer. Working with Gemina Gas, he coordinated local strike teams to carry out make-safe works to manage the resulting gas outage, going house to house to turn off gas taps. He was then established a forward command post to coordinate out-of-area teams tasked to Lithgow and surrounds. A large storm over Bathurst on the 13th of November resulted in near-record flooding on the Macquarie River. Despite his own home being damaged, Deputy Group Officer Grabham turned out with his Eglinton Brigade to door-knock residents and join sandbagging efforts. For his commitment to the safety of the community in these emergencies, Group Officer Andrew Grabham is awarded the Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation individual, Senior Deputy Captain Tanya Willey, Chifley Lithgow, Area Western. Senior Deputy Captain Tanya Willey is recognised for her contribution to the community and her fellow Eglinton Brigade members during two major flooding emergencies in the Chifley Lithgow district. On the 2nd of November 2022, a gas pipeline under the Macquarie River ruptured during severe flooding across the Central West. Senior Deputy Captain Willey volunteered for multiple days to assist with make-safe works to manage the resulting gas outage in Bathurst, Lithgow and Oberon, door-knocking and assisting Gemina personnel to turn off the gas to around 13,000 properties. Late on the 13th of November, Senior Deputy Captain Willey and other members' homes were damaged by severe flash flooding. Senior Deputy Captain Willey worked with the brigade to help her fellow volunteers make their homes safe before redeploying to the Fire Control Centre. Senior Deputy Captain Willie then continued to support the gas company operation until its conclusion. For her contribution to the safety of the community, Senior Deputy Captain Tanya Willie is a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation. Don't be scared. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit, the Burke HQ Rural Fire Brigade, Far West Area Western. The members of the Burke Headquarters Rural Fire Brigade are recognised for their professionalism and commitment in responding to a fatal road train accident at Brewarrina on the 19th of February 2022. The Burke Headquarters Brigade was responded out of area at 19:25 hours to assist the Brewarrina Fire and Rescue New South Wales crews with a head-on collision involving two B-double road trains approximately 100 kilometres away on the western outskirts of Brewarrina. Whilst many kilometres from the incident, the crews in the two Category 1 appliances observed an ever-increasing plume of black smoke and received reports of fatalities on scene. Upon arrival, crews began working with the Fire and Rescue New South Wales crews to suppress the fire on the eastern side, as well as commencing work on the western side of the incident where the fire was still yet to be under control. The crews worked tirelessly for 6 hours with other emergency services to help bring the incident under control, contending with poor water supply, difficult terrain in the dark and traumatic conditions with the loss of the two truck drivers' lives. Local RFS crews later took control of the incident to enable the Burke Headquarters Brigade to stand down. The professionalism and commitment shown by the brigade members during this very difficult incident was well beyond their call of duty. The Burke Headquarters Brigade are worthy recipients of a Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit, the Broke Rural Fire Brigade, Hunter Valley Area Hunter. The Broke Rural Fire Brigade is recognised for its valued support for its community during severe flooding in 2022. As the Wallumbye Brook began to rise, Captain Kathleen Everett and Senior Deputy Captain Kenny Fitzsimons began welfare checks of residents in low-lying areas. Within hours, floodwater has risen rapidly throughout the village, which was isolated without power. The Broke Brigade became the central focus for assistance within their community, with members rallying to support impacted residents. The Brigade's plan of action included regular welfare checks on a number of people with medical issues. People who had to vacate their homes early were able to find shelter at their station, where members had set up generators and provided their limited supplies of food and drinking water. When evacuation orders were issued, the Brigade safely and efficiently coordinated the movement of residents and maintained welfare checks on those who were isolated. As the water receded and support agencies arrived, the Brigade's systems for logging requests for help provided a solid platform for subsequent recovery operations. Over the next 10 days, the Brigade worked with recovery agencies in coordinating various operational activities the RFS could undertake in assisting local residents in restoring some form of normality within the community. The Broke Brigade provided an essential service to the local community during the crisis and is a most worthy recipient of a Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit, the Bulli Rural Fire Brigade, Illawarra Sutherland Area, Greater Sydney. The members of the Bulli Rural Fire Brigade are recognised for their professional and determined response to save the life of a colleague. On Easter Monday 2022, the brigade was fundraising and engaging with the community at a local Bunnings store. The crew had been on site for several hours when a crew member began to feel unwell. Concerned for their colleagues' welfare, Deputy Captains Nathan Sparks, Anita Joinking and Frank Haggerty and firefighter Tad Back provided initial first aid, but the crew member's condition quickly deteriorated. It became apparent he was going into cardiac arrest. With the brigade vehicle away from the scene on other duties, the crew had to both think and act fast. Employing their recently renewed first aid skills, the team identified and retrieved a public access defibrillator, set up a treatment area away from worried onlookers and began working as a team to revive the casualty, who had ceased breathing and had no noticeable pulse. 000 was called and, together with an off-duty nurse that was passing by, coordinated CPR and defibrillation to provide the casualty with the greatest possible chance of survival until the arrival of New South Wales Ambulance. Ambulance and hospital personnel were clear that without the decisive and professional actions of his fellow crew members, the crew member would not have survived. Under extremely stressful conditions, the 4 crew members focused and used their skill and knowledge to save the life of their colleague. The Bulli Rural Fire Brigade is a worthy recipient of a Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit, Buxton Rural Fire Brigade, Southern Highlands Area, Greater Sydney. The Buxton Rural Fire Brigade is recognised for its members' professional and compassionate response to a traumatic motor vehicle accident resulting in multiple fatalities in 2022. On the evening of the 6th of September, the brigade was responded to a motor vehicle accident on East Parade at Buxton. As the first emergency service to arrive, the brigade observed a single vehicle had impacted with a tree. The officer in charge assessed the safety of the scene and members of the public on site. The crew set up for fire protection and relieved a member of the public to continue providing CPR to the first accessible patient. 2 crew members discovered 4 other casualties, all of whom were deceased. Retrieving the trauma kit and the AED from their vehicle, 3 crew members continued with CPR and other resuscitation attempts in a bid to sustain the patient's life. These efforts continued under the direction of an arriving New South Wales Ambulance paramedic before the casualty was also declared deceased. This accident, in which 5 local teenagers lost their lives, had a profound effect on the local community, including all emergency service personnel. The members of the Buxton Brigade managed this incident with professionalism, skill and empathy, collectively assisting each other through the trauma that they had witnessed. The members of the Buxton Rural Fire Brigade are deserving recipients of the Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit, Cumberland Operational Support Rural Fire Brigade, Cumberland, Area, Greater Sydney. Members of the Cumberland Operational Support Brigade are recognised for their commitment in providing essential support for the New South Wales response to the COVID-19 pandemic during 2021. Brigade members supported the New South Wales health pandemic response in the Greater Sydney area by delivering emergency food and personal care packages to sick and vulnerable members of the community who were in isolation and unable to otherwise obtain vital supplies. Between the 21st of July and the 9th of October, the members delivered more than 2,300 food hampers and 700 personal care packages to more than 800 members of the community across Sydney, Blue Mountains, Central Coast and Newcastle. These deliveries were completed in difficult circumstances, requiring members to comply with rigid COVID safety protocols to minimise the potential risks to their own health. From their base in Regentford, members committed more than 1,200 hours of their time to distribute the aid packages, even completing their deliveries when the main distribution centre went offline due to a confirmed COVID-19 case. Numerous brigade members volunteered to provide this vital support to their community without hesitation, some for a minimum of 15 days or more, working Saturdays, Sundays and often through the week to ensure people suffering unforeseen hardship did not go without. For their commitment to supporting those in hardship and the New South Wales response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the members of the Cumberland Operational Support Brigade are worthy recipients of a Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit, Macarthur COVID-19 Assistance Team, Macarthur Area, Greater Sydney. Members of the Macarthur District COVID-19 Assistance Team are recognised for their commitment in providing essential support for the New South Wales response to the pandemic during 2021. When the Delta variant of COVID-19 began to spread rapidly throughout Sydney and the Fairfield local government area, in particular in July 2021, New South Wales Health approached the RFS for personnel to assist. Within 1.5 days of activation, the RFS team, together with New South Wales Health and St John Ambulance personnel, had converted the Prairie Wood Youth and Community Centre into a temporary vaccination hub. While the intent had been to operate the hub for several weeks to vaccinate local school teachers and aged care workers, the RFS commitment extended to 2.5 months, with up to 2,500 people a day being vaccinated at the peak. The array of RFS crews' tasks included assisting members of the public with the use of mobile phone applications, checking vaccination appointment details, performing health screenings, assisting frail and infirm persons, establishing pop-up vaccination hubs at off-site locations, couriering vaccine supplies, general site logistics and crowd control. Although rigid safety precautions were followed, crews assumed a high level of personal risk to their own health as they came into contact with thousands of members of the public in an environment of elevated anxiety. Each RFS member volunteered more than 25 days to support New South Wales Health, carrying out their difficult tasks with dedication and diligence over a prolonged period and earning high praise from their community and senior health officials. The Macarthur District COVID-19 Assistance Team displayed great professionalism and empathy during their deployment, and they are worthy recipients of a Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit, Gledswood Rural Fire Brigade, Macarthur Area, Greater Sydney. The Gledswood Rural Fire Brigade is recognised for its courage and commitment in response to severe flooding across the Macarthur area in March 2022. On Wednesday the 2nd of March, severe storms led to significant flash flooding in the Macarthur area. Members of the Gledswood Brigade attended 8 separate incidents, risking their own safety while adapting quickly to unfamiliar scenarios. At 13:45 hours, the crew responded to help residents trapped by rising floodwater in a house at Rossmore, evacuating 2 adults and 7 dogs to safety, along with a neighbour who was also escorted through floodwaters to higher ground. A short time later, a call was received to assist people trapped in a vehicle in floodwater. The brigade retrieved an adult and 3 young children from the vehicle before transporting them to their home. In response to a report from a member of the public, brigade members waded through rough water to door-knock homes in nearby flooded streets, locating 2 adults who needed help to evacuate. The speed and the depth of the water surrounding the property meant that a floodboat would be required, with the brigade subsequently supporting the SES to rescue the pair before relocating them to safety. Later that night, another urgent call was received to rescue a person stranded in floodwater on the back of a ute. Members, along with SES Swiftwater rescue operators, ventured 200 metres through water in darkness to rescue that driver. For its members' life-saving efforts, professionalism and compassion while working in difficult and hazardous conditions, the Gledswood Brigade is a worthy recipient of a Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit, the Hawkesbury District, Hawkesbury Area, Greater Sydney. Rural Fire Brigades and Fire Control Centre staff in the Hawkesbury District are recognised for their commitment to serving the community during repeated and challenging flooding events across 2021 and 2022. When devastating floods struck communities in the Hawkesbury District in 21 and 22, all district brigades undertook prolonged service with response and recovery operations. Despite many volunteers being personally affected, brigades responded selflessly, including members taking time away from employment to provide assistance to the Hawkesbury community. Throughout their flood operations, brigades attended more than 1,200 flood-related taskings in response to a high volume of requests for assistance from the public and other agencies. Members were deployed to a variety of tasks, including undertaking rapid damage assessment of flood-affected properties, creating and maintaining access to and egress from flooded areas and properties, cleaning up and washing out homes and other buildings, and transporting people and medical supplies. District staff and brigades continually perform beyond expectations throughout the flood crisis, as well as maintaining responses to routine fire-related emergencies. For their extended and dedicated service to the community, a Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit is awarded to the Hawkesbury District Brigades and Fire Control Centre staff. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit, Mid-Lachlan Valley Team, Mid-Lachlan Valley, Area Western. The Mid-Lachlan Valley Team is recognised for its exceptional service to the community during 3 major flood events from September to December 2022. When localised flooding in early September resulted in a number of road closures, the team provided a transport service for teachers from the small Bedurabong Public School and a nurse working at Forbes Hospital. The service was maintained until mid-December. Park Shire was again deluged on the 22nd and 23rd of September, and during this event there was a tragic loss of life in floodwater just north of Tullamore. The Mid-Lachlan Valley team pulled together to provide ongoing support to the responding volunteers, the Tullamore community and each other. When the New South Wales SES requested assistance on the 9th of October, members of the Mid-Lachlan Valley team were assigned to door knocking, transporting essential workers, sandbagging and providing leadership as divisional commander. The first evacuation order for Forbes was issued on the 13th of October. RFS staff and volunteers were instrumental in the coordination of the orders, as well as assisting residents to evacuate. Low-lying areas of Forbes were inundated 3 days later. On the 5th of November, the Lachlan River peaked at 10.67 metres, with large parts of the town inundated and flooding also occurring in the Wetton Shire, impacting the villages nearby. 8 days later, widespread flash flooding reached as far as Molong. Members of the Mid-Lachlan Valley team can be proud of their performance and the manner in which they represented the RFS throughout these extended emergencies. The Mid-Lachlan Valley team demonstrated resilience, dedication and professionalism, providing remarkable support to each other, the district's volunteers and the community, and is a worthy recipient of a Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation unit. A Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation unit, Mount Macdonald and Wyangala Rural Fire Brigades, Canobolas Area Western. The Mount Macdonald and Wyangala Brigades and Group Officer Guy Noble are recognised for their swift and decisive actions to rescue a motorist stranded in floodwater in November of 2021. The brigades, along with Group Officer Noble, were responded on the 16th of November to assist a driver who was stranded in floodwater on the Darby's Falls Bridge over the Lachlan River, northwest of Wyangala. Arriving on scene, they found a middle-aged male sitting in 1.4 metres of floodwater in his car, which had been pushed up against a guardrail. Assessing the situation, Group Officer Noble and Mount Macdonald Captain Paul Newman devised a plan to use a Category 1 tanker to extricate the driver. With communication unable to be established with the New South Wales Ambulance Rescue Unit that was on the other side of the bridge, New South Wales police officers on scene agreed with the plan. Captain Newman, along with Wyangala firefighter Nathan Steele and Mount Macdonald firefighter Robert Savell, entered the floodwater, inching the tanker forward until alongside the stranded vehicle. Crew members Savell and Steele then worked to lift the driver from his vehicle into the tanker before Captain Newman slowly reversed the vehicle back to dry land. Mount Macdonald Deputy Captain Joanne Chandler-Heen then took over to provide first aid to the male, who was suffering from hypothermia, while Group Officer Noble arranged for a New South Wales ambulance to rendezvous with the crew to provide further medical assistance to the casualty. For their members' determined efforts and putting the safety of another before their own, the Mount Macdonald and Wyangala Brigades and Group Officer Noble are worthy recipients of a Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation unit. Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation unit, the Spring Creek Road Flood Assistance, Cudgegong Area Western. The Gulgong DC, Mudgee Headquarters and Mullamuddy Rural Fire Brigades, together with Cudgegong Raft, OCV and Group 3, are recognised for their professional and compassionate response in a confronting operation during severe flooding in the Gulgong area in October 2022. Shortly before 23:30 hours on Sunday the 23rd of October, the Gulgong DC Brigade and Cudgegong Group 3 responded to reports of a vehicle in floodwaters along Spring Creek Road, approximately 6 kilometres northeast of Gulgong. A single vehicle had been swept into the flooded Kuyal Creek following more than 70 millimetres of rain in the preceding 24 hours, with one of the 4 occupants missing. A multi-agency search operation, including a swift water rescue team from Queensland Fire and Emergency Services and a toll air ambulance, was launched in the area before being suspended just after 3 o'clock. Under the command of New South Wales Police Rescue, the search resumed later that morning with the Mudgee Headquarters and Mullamuddy Brigades and Cudgegong Raft and the OCV, together with Group 3 participating. Working diligently with careful attention to detail, an RFS search party located the missing person shortly before 10 o'clock. Despite the continuing nature of the incident, the volunteer firefighters from attending brigades remained on scene to assist New South Wales Police with the subsequent operation to recover the deceased. Following this response, the group continued to support the New South Wales SES through the flood emergency in the region, particularly in undertaking reconnaissance. At all times, the Cudgegong RFS members displayed a high level of professionalism and discretion under trying conditions, performing beyond expectation in discharging their duties, and they are worthy recipients of the Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit. The Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit for the Wiseman's Ferry Rural Fire Brigade, the Hills Area, Greater Sydney. The Wiseman's Ferry Rural Fire Brigade is recognised for its sustained and selfless response to support its isolated local community, particularly throughout multiple major fire and flood events since 2019. The brigade and community faces the challenges created in a location surrounded by steep, thickly forested and fire-prone hills lining the flood-prone Hawkesbury River and its tributaries, with the main access route frequently closed by accidents or falling trees during storms and fires. As a only local emergency service, the Wiseman's Ferry Brigade is equipped with both fire tankers and fire boats, which double as rescue and recovery resources during flooding events. The community, which has experienced fire and flood events each year since 2019, therefore looks to the brigade for a broad range of emergency protection and support around the clock. Throughout the extended flood and recovery phases of successive recent flood disasters, Wiseman's Ferry members worked from sunrise to dusk, rescuing, evacuating and caring for residents until they could be safely accommodated elsewhere. Despite many facing the trauma of losing their own homes, businesses and livelihoods, brigade members showed compassion for their neighbours who had suffered similar loss. Even during hours of respite, they continued to complex health emergencies and medical evacuations by both land and water, undertaking risky resupply drops to isolated families and surrounding communities. They then turned their hands to the onerous work of clean-up. The Wiseman's Ferry members' outstanding efforts and generous commitment have bolstered the spirit of a devastated community, making the brigade a worthy recipient of a Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit. So looking at the clock, I think we've just ticked over to Friday afternoon and only one left now. So the Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit, Strike Team East 19042, Cumberland and Blue Mountains Area, Greater Sydney. Strike Team East 19042 is recognised for its crew members' tenacity and commitment in responding to a report of residents trapped in a home under threat of fire in September 2019. Group Officer Chris Batten and Strike Team East 19042 were deployed to the Bees Nest Fire northeast of Armidale on the 6th of September when they were responded at 21:20 hours to reports of of children trapped in a house with a major fire front rapidly approaching. With local crews engaged at a fire front impacting the property, Group Officer Batten tasked the strike team and another team from the mid-north coast to locate the house. The Glen Innes Fire Control Centre clarified the location was approximately 5 kilometres north. Strike Team East, 3 Category 7 tankers, Mulgoa 7, Orchard Hill 7 and Erskine Park 7, along with Group Officer Batten and Armidale police detectives, responded towards the home, while Galston 1 and North Rocks 1 were tasked to property protection with the Mid-North Coast Strike Team. As the crews travelled north, it was evident from the active fire on both sides of the road that an intense front had swept through the area, causing several trees to fall across the roadway, blocking the vehicle's paths. Crew members also used chainsaws to clear more than 10 trees from a 3-kilometre stretch of road with the help of a nearby resident using a front-end loader. On arrival at the property, the crews located all of the occupants safely inside the home and set about extinguishing a number of hotspots around the building. The members of Strike Team East 19042 demonstrated dedication and professionalism to stay focused on the required tasks in difficult and hazardous conditions and are worthy recipients of a Commissioner's Certificate of Commendation Unit. So congratulations to all of our recipients today. I'll now invite the Minister and the Commissioner to take their seats again as we turn our attention just briefly to 2 recipients who were unable to attend today's ceremony, and we will be presenting these awards separately. Commissioner's Commendation for Service, Individual, Group Captain, Retired, James Smith, AFSM, from the Hills, Area Greater Sydney. Group Captain James Smith is recognised for his distinguished service to the RFS and Middle Dural Brigade for almost half a century. For his sustained and commendable service to the RFS, Group Captain Smith is a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Service. Commissioner's Commendation for Service, Individual, Deputy Captain Jeff Wood, Macarthur, Area Greater Sydney. Deputy Captain Jeff Wood is recognised for his distinguished service to the RFS and the Macarthur District for over 36 years. For his sustained service, integrity and mentorship, Deputy Captain Jeff Wood is a worthy recipient of the Commissioner's Commendation for Service. Can you please congratulate those 2 gentlemen? All right, how's everyone feeling after that long morning? I'm glad I'm paid per word on days like this, I think. I'd like to again congratulate all of our recipients for your well-deserved recognition today and take this moment on behalf of all of us here today to say thank you, and please join me once again in congratulating all of our 2023 award recipients. A big thank you to everyone who has had a hand in organising this morning's event. The presentation of our awards is one of the most important dates on the RFS calendar and for our members, and I know how much effort, thought and respect you have all put into ensuring that our ceremonies today have been a fitting tribute to our members' commitment, service and courage. So a special call out to the New South Wales State Ceremonial Unit, the events and award teams, the media and communications team for the videos and their contributions, and a big thank you as well to the team here at the Dubbo Training Academy for helping to put on this event today. In conclusion, I'd like to ask all of our award recipients and you guests to remain for official photographs. Don't wander too far. We'll be taking some photos straight away outside in front of the front wall of the Academy. Our other guests, you're free to mingle up the back there. Thank you to those who have joined us online for this morning's session. We're going to do it all over again at 2 o'clock this afternoon for another group, and we look forward to you joining us online then. Invited guests are welcome to make their way out just outside the auditorium where refreshments are available. Thank you and congratulations once again.